We're looking at the Torah, which means law or instructions. We're talking about the instructions given to Moses and the Israelites on Mount Sinai, right after God had freed them from slavery in Egypt. At least that's the form that we have in the final literary work of the Torah, which is also the name of the first 5 books of the Bible. Which kind of gives you an idea of how important this law or instructions are to the Jewish tradition. So, God took the people out of Egypt. The Exodus happened for a reason, right? He took them out of Egypt to bring them into a new society. And that's what the Torah is about. The Torah furnishes the model of that new society. You can see it right in the 10 Commandments, right? It's the first laws written in the Torah. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. And then he's going to start the instructions, right? But the whole thing is framed in the liberation of the people to be part of this new society. And we're going to see that these laws / instructions lay a framework for that. This new society of freedom, justice, equality. And that's why the Torah is presented right after the Israelites get out of Egypt. Right? They get out of Egypt, they go to Mount Sinai. Moses comes down with the Torah. So the Torah itself is a figure of rescuing the people, right? You can't understand it as the demands, like God says do this, God says do that. If you don't do it, he's going to be mad and punish you. No, it's in itself a life-giving act of salvation. Right? Even in the instructions from Deuteronomy about the Torah, that when are you gonna? What's the point of this? They say, well, someday your kids are going to ask you, what's the point of all these laws? What's going on with this, right? And you'll say, we were once slaves in Egypt, and the Lord delivered us, right? And he brought us here, and he gave us this great land. Now we have this great life, and he told us to do that. He gave us all these instructions that we may always have this good life. That's why we follow all these laws. This is our vehicle of salvation. This is what makes us the people of God. Faith, right, in God. Trust, right, in God. And what is he revealing to us through the Torah? Which is that new society, the not oppressive Egyptian society. It's a new and better way. They're born again. So if we do good biblical scholarship, we can see the Torah grew over centuries. It really wasn't dropped all at once from a mountaintop, so to speak, right? But there was like a core to it. And then, different legal texts come out of that and how to live that out. But the main point, the core instruction, is to worship God, right? It's like Abraham just gave everything to God. You have this trust in God, and you put God before everything. And this is why God is talked about as jealous, right? This is why the first commandment is, you shall not have other gods before me. And God's talked about as jealous, right? To think about, hey, just him, right? We're just supposed to worship him. We're not supposed to mix into these other gods, which, again, remember, they are expressions of worldly desires and powers, right? Nature. They don't have the power to save. They don't have the power to give us a new vision of life. What do they have the power to do? Repeat systems of oppression. Reflect a powerful individual's desires, right? So God being a jealous God, it's talking about he's not the sum of these divine elements in the world, right? He's a God that is other, leading them out of slavery, right? He's leading them out of slavery to these other gods, fear of nature, right? Oppression by the desires of other humans. who use religious visions as a way to oppress other people for their own wills, right? So if you're going to worship God, the transcendent, right? You gotta, these other gods, they don't fit in. It's not the same thing, right? The God who is wholly other, remember? Not the sum of all the earthly powers, but that which brings them all into being, and that which alone can liberate into the divine life, right? And when he talks about punishing, again, we have to see that analogously too. We have to read that canonically to understand, wait a minute, you know, let's look at the full vision of God. And that punishment, right, isn't God getting angry and, taking it out on you. Again, he doesn't need people to follow him. He doesn't have a confidence problem, right? But it represents God letting us suffer the consequences of our own mistakes, suffering the consequences of sin, so that we can learn to love instead. Right? Some people all talk about it like jealous, like also think about it like he's jealous for you, like he really likes you, like he wants you to love him so that you can be happy, right? Think about it that way. It kind of helps give it a different perspective too. But regardless, it's not, he's jealous like Jake LaMotta or something. It's not a Scarface out there, right? So worshiping Yahweh alone means orienting every part of your life to Yahweh, right? Remember Abraham gave up everything in his life. The life, even that which mattered more to him than his own life, right? And so we see this, these 613 commandments or instructions, they go in every detail of life. There's nothing untouched. Why? Because God is to be presented everywhere. All things honor God. Right? Remember, the transcendent is beyond in everything. There's an immanence to it. There's nothing that's left out. So we see this in different ways. Three big ways we see this. That the Torah is concerned with the inner world and the exterior world, right? What's inside and what's outside. We're not going in to pray to God every day in a little room every day and then nothing else matters. We're not going to church on the Sabbath. We're not going to the synagogue or something and then we leave there. What's different? Right? The whole human world is subject to the rule of God, so that everything may receive its dignity and identity. And so they have laws of everything in the Torah. They have laws about mold on your house, like what to do if you get mold on your house. There's laws in there like where you're supposed to get rid of your business. Like when you go to the bathroom, what are you supposed to do with it? Why? Because all that stuff matters. All that stuff is part of human life, and it's all also like a moral thing. Like if you don't take care of the land, people are going to get sick. I mean, that's the biggest problem they have in a lot of refugee camps and stuff, is that it's hard to move the waste, right, to the right place so that there's cross-contamination with food. And people get sick. Hookworm, that used to be a problem. People used to have, like in the South, in the United States, people used to have anemia a lot. Until they figured out if you dig an outhouse hole 6 feet deep, the hookworm don't make it up to the surface, and so the problem was gone, right? So again, it shows all care for the whole human being, and I mean that's what it comes down to, right? You can't say you love someone but you don't care. You do something careless so they get sick. You read these laws. A lot of them are liability laws. Like you dig a pit and your neighbor's animal falls in it. Are you liable? If your ox gores someone, are you liable? Well, that's not just a legal technical thing. That's a real person getting hurt there or not. That's what this law is all about. They're creating the society of equality and justice, the New Jerusalem. Right? And so it's also concerned with time and space. And we see this in the festival calendars. They're connected to the rhythms of agriculture, but they don't follow the lunar and solar cycles like the Canaanite festivals did. Instead, they're set on sevens, the divine number, right? On the seventh day, it's the day God rested. And so we see this like when you have these pilgrimages to Jerusalem, where the people are supposed to gather in Jerusalem. We see the people gathered, drawn together, and they're living that life of the new society that God is establishing as the people of God, right? There's no differences between rich and poor. The master and the slave, they're at the same table, right? And everybody remembers the saving deeds of God. And the people are happy and grateful in the land, right? It's like a new Exodus, Lofig says. There's the passage about the Feast of Weeks that we were talking about, right? You shall rejoice in the presence of the Lord your God, together with your son and daughter, your male and female slave, the Levite within your gates, as well as the resident alien, the orphan, the widow, right? Because remember, you too were slaves in Egypt, right? So that's why they're supposed to take care of the poor and oppressed in their society, which is the alien, the immigrant, right? The refugee, the orphan, the widow. These are people that didn't have a safety net. And he said, take care of them because you were in their situation, right? It's like what I think about as an Italian American. Like, my great-grandparents were immigrants to the country. They had a rough time, but they were given the opportunity to work hard to establish themselves. People didn't want them here. They faced antagonism, right? But they were allowed, and in some ways even helped, right? And allowed to establish themselves. And within a few generations, they were integrated into the community and they had success. So my ancestors were immigrants. I'd like other people, right, to have the same opportunity. That's what it means to me anyways. That's what I see in that.